Welcome to Phil Talks Tech. I've been focusing on my Ender 3 printer and I've got a new toy this week. We're going to unbox and build a Sapphire Plus. When I was thinking about another printer, I wanted Core XY printer, something different, not a bed slinger. And I've looked around and I settled on the Sapphire Plus for a couple of reasons. It's got one of the most solid frames I've seen. Definitely not perfect, needs a bit of tinkering, and if you know me, you know I'm a chronic tinkerer. So it's right up my alley. So we're gonna put it together. I want to build it today and I'm gonna leave it completely stock. Let's see what's inside. One of the reasons I bought this one too is I bought it from an Australian distributor, not from overseas. So hopefully get a little bit of local support possibly, but if I need it, but just like to support local companies. There'll be a link in the description. That's a decent sized build plate. 310 by 310, so looks good. A little roll of white PLA, 200 grams. Enough to get started printing. DMG style extruder. Clip. USB cable. Bag of tools and the PTFE tubing. Looks like a filament run out sensor in there and the USB stick. Looks like our bed mounts. There's the axis. And we have several bags of nuts and bolts and bits and pieces. We'll have a look at all them as we get to put it together. They're all labelled, numbered in numbered packets, so we'll sort through them as we do the build. One of the features of this printer I like is it has linear rails on all axes. So that's a nice feature. Yeah, linear rails are much more precise than V-rollers and grooves, so yeah, gives you a much more precise movement, less chance for play, but critical in setting up properly so it doesn't bind up. And this is the top of the printer with the belts already installed. There's nice and freely. We have some colour strips to hide our wires, Australian power cord, insulation for the heated bed, and finally in this layer, the actual glass bed itself. Okay, so we have 20 by 40 aluminium extrusions for the uprights. They look lovely. And we have two 20/20 extrusions. All nicely machined. And two lead screws for the Z-axis. So it's dual Z-axis, so it's ported on both sides, which is another one of the features I liked about it. They look nice and straight. Get this layer off and we have our base. The latest version with what they call skylights for accessing the main board and the wiring. So that's a nice feature. The earlier version didn't have those hatches, so I'll have a look in there after. The cables are all nicely taped back, ready to run up through our rails. Alright, and this is our hot end assembly, all assembled and ready to go. Looks like it's all in here. So, yeah. One of the major criticisms of this printer is the actual hot end. I'll give it a try though. They reckon they've updated it in this version, but if it doesn't perform, I've got a couple of options to higher temp hot end anyway, which I'd like to do for some more exotic filaments. So, all right, I'll lift this out now. That's quite solid. And there we have it. You'll see we have both dual Z-axis steppers in the base. You'll see more of that as we put it together. Well, that's it all unboxed. Let the fun begin. Just one thing to always check is that the power supply is switched to your supply. In Australia, we have 220 volts, 240 volts, so mine's set to 230, we're fine. Yeah, so I've also bought the MakerBase MKS Robin Wi-Fi, which just plugs in here. So while we're doing it, we might as well put the Wi-Fi in now. Very cheap upgrades, they're only $10. I was going to put ferrules on the wires and found they've got little brass ferrules on them already, so it saves me a job. If you want to know what a ferrule is, check out the link in the description below. There's a video on fitting ferrules on one of my Ender printers. So it's quite a good looking manual. It's a parts list and it's all numbered where your all the packets for all the different pieces are. Step 1, install the feet. Put the feet on. 4 feet and 4 screws. Before everybody asks, there'll be a link in the description for this little electric screwdriver. The little Wowstick Pro. Every time I use it in a video, I always get comments, where did you get that from? And there's a link in the description below. Turn it back over. I did stand on some blocks so I wasn't leaning on the stepper motors. I've nicely taped all the wires back here. We'll leave them taped back till we need them. The next step is to put the uprights in. And I'm going to need M5 by 16 and M5 by 10 bolts. Packet 19 and 20. Put the 4 uprights in. They will have to line up with the crossbars. There's a little cutout machined in for the cross cutout. The side ones, I'll just loosely fiddle these. I'm not going to tighten any of this down till it's square. So we'll just slowly. I'll loosely put all these in so I can hold them in while I put the bottom screws in. I just want to make sure the frame's all square before I tighten everything up. I'm not going to do any of these tight. Just get them all loosely together so I can square it all up with the top frame before we go and tighten everything down. Z-axis linear rails in. So there's a Z-axis linear rail and it has some stoppers in here just while we build it so it doesn't fall off. So we won't take them out till we've got it mostly assembled. Let's make sure I clear this Z-axis limit switch wire. Put 2 screws in there. Just check what size screws I need for the top ones. M5 by 30s. Just 2 M5 by 30 screws on the top of these. Like I said, still not tightening all the way yet. This is the top. Stepper motors to the front. Oh, it's not in there. That's it. Put our screws in. Same screws again. These are the sides on the top bottom. Starting to look like a printer. These are recessed, so they should help square it all up. We'll need M5 by 16 screws in the side and the little flat recessed M5 by 10s at the top. Like I said, nothing's tight yet, just nipping them all up loosely and we'll square it all up and then we'll tighten everything. Definitely getting more and more rigid as it goes. The more screws we put in. Okay. on these nice and smoothly. Now I've got to do these corner blocks. 4 of these aluminium right angle pieces, which will set up in here on each side. Just have to assemble them with a screw and a T-nut. So just nip these up. And these should chew it all up nice and square. Nice and tight now. Install the hot bed mount, the bed mounts. Putting a bit of super lube down on the threads as I go. Yeah, important to get some proper lubrication in these straight up because they're brass on steel, so they will wear very quickly if you don't have any lubrication. So. This is super lube, which is the perfect lead screws. I'm going to take it all up, make sure there's no binding. The rods don't bind anywhere. Take the transport rubbers out so we can take the lead screw all the way to the top. There's nice and freely. Packet 13. Supports for the lead screws. One has a limit switch on it for our Z-axis, and the other one is the opposite side, so with no switch in it. The early model had a switch on each side, but they've done away with that, which is probably a good thing. I will eventually put a ABL on this for leveling, but like I said, I'm going to leave it stock until I run it a few things, and then before we start upgrading things. Print upgrades, yes, definitely build a better spool holder. That one will not hold a big spool at all. And I'm not sure what else, possibly some cable chains or something. I'll see how it all pans out. How it prints first. I will definitely be building an enclosure for it, so these sides will be easy to close in, stop any drafts, and also keep the heat constant inside. So I take these down. It's going to fit the insulation on the bottom of the heated bed before I can fit the bed. Try and get it level between all the holes. Let's get it on there nice and evenly. Help retain some of the heat. Okay, I have to fit the heated bed now before we tighten everything up. Protective film off it. The foam underneath the bed is insulation, just to help it retain some heat and not lose all of its heat. I think I'm ready to tighten these down here now. I just want to do something before I do that. Just going to check over the hot end before I assemble it. Easier to look at it now. And this is our hot end. The nozzle appears to be tight. I'll just pull that coupling out. Just see what sort of hot end we're dealing with. Like I said, this will probably be one of the first changes. Yep, she's Bowden tube right through to the nozzle, so I don't think you'll see down there. Well, that's going to be awkward. I'm going to have to turn it around to do that. Three screws in here. I think we're going to need our Bowden tube before long. This is our Bowden tube, PTFE tube, and as you can see, it's important that it's square on the end, and this is clearly not square. So we will square that up before we do anything. Just so happen to have a little tool here for doing that. We'll lay it in here nice and easy. Cuts it off nice and square. Got to make sure it goes all the way into the hot end. Yep, that's all the way in. We have 3 screws here. I think we'll come up with a better strain relief than this. Just have to fit the X-axis limit switch into the carriage here. Screws are up here, already on the gantry. I'll just have to pull them out. Right, X-axis limit switch has to face down. Clicks when it gets over there. To make sure you've got the furthest reach. That's the furthest this will reach. So this cable has to be strung up to that, so it'll reach there. And Bowden tube's going to come down to the extruder here. Got a little cable restraint here, a little packet. It's going to go up here to hold our cables in place. So I'll just put that over the cable. Right. That's our furthest reach. It's got to come all the way back. It's not good that, I don't like that. Yes, we'll think of a better way to restrain that cable so it doesn't foul or anything. So it gets right in the belts there, so we're going to have to do better than that. We'll probably put a strain that holds it up. Now we can start doing our wiring. Plug the things in. And we have here extruder. They're all labelled A to A. You can't really mix them up. It's convenient they got a channel and some strips to hold them all in. And we'll have to do our extruder next, I assume. Hide the cables. We'll do the Y-axis. Might fit some of these now. There's little cover strips to hide our wires. Yeah, nice and neatly hidden. This is the Z-axis limit switch. So we'll bring this right up here and plug it in. And we can tuck that cable in there. So hide that. I like these colour strips. Nicely thought idea. I need the extruder now. It's a BMG extruder. Washer. Now we're going to put it onto the extruder. And then we just tighten that up there, and that's it. And that gives us some tension on our extruder. And then we'll need to fit the extruder up here. Okay. I'll have some cables to run up. The extruder motor. And this is the filament holder. I don't think this will be on there for long. It's a tiny little holder. Don't think it's going to fit some of the rolls of film one I've got. Just check the location where they put it actually. Doing it up the right way. It's sticky. I don't want it sticky. It's always satisfying peeling off the plastic. I'll just check our movement. Go to tools, home. We'll home the X and see what it does. There she goes, she's moving over. And she homed. Home the Y. I'll have to watch this wiring until I make a all go in the right direction. Hits the limit switch and that's homed. Now we'll home the Z. This is the one that's go back to home. Okay, so Oh, the Z's coming up. Same with the Z axis now. Just have to put my hand on the power switch in case that comes up too far, touches the nozzle. As you can see, I'm printing a benchy. I've already printed a calibration cube, and I'm pretty impressed with the default settings. I haven't I loaded the default settings for the Sapphire Plus into Cura and just sliced and printed the cube, and it was beautiful. And now I'm doing the benchy and a little bit of string, and I have to play with my retraction a little bit, but wow, the actual print quality is amazing. The layer lines are almost invisible, and it's fast. I've printed the calibration cube in half the time it did on the old Ender, so, and the benches, yeah, flying along. In the comments, if you're interested in a bit of a print off between the Ender 3 V2 and the Sapphire Plus, see what the print quality's difference is and speed. Yeah, after initial setup, I leveled the bed, loaded a calibration cube into Cura and sliced it with the default printer settings for the Sapphire Plus, and it printed near perfect. One of the best cubes I've ever printed. And like I said, next to no layer lines visible. And the benches come along quite good too. So I'm quite impressed. The benchy was much faster than the Ender prints, and it's great quality. Looks really good. You can see the text on the bottom. Yeah, tiniest little bit of string. I might adjust the retraction a little bit, and the cube came out excellent. Really nice cube. The only real issue I had was the setting up the end stops, and it's all done in the menu, so that was quite easy. For some reason they had a end stop enabled for the Z2 rod, so I disabled that, and away it went. Hope you liked what you saw today. If you did, why don't you subscribe and hit the like button. I'm Phil, and this is Phil Talks Tech.